My name is Roger Ver. I was the first person in the entire world to start investing in cryptocurrency startups, and Bitcoin specifically, of course. And today I'm the CEO of Bitcoin.com and promoting Bitcoin Cash as the best digital currency for the entire world to use as a currency. I definitely can be a bit of a polarizing figure, but at the end of the day, I want to urge people to think for themselves, look at the evidence and evaluate the situation and decide for themselves. You don't need me or any politician or anybody else, for that matter, to tell you how to live your life and what to think and what to do. Think for yourself. That's why you have a mind inside your head. I hold a whole bunch of Bitcoin, and by Bitcoin, of course, I mean Bitcoin Cash, because that's, if you read the original white paper and the definition given of Bitcoin, there's maybe, I don't know, 8 different things, 10 different things that you can come up with that define Bitcoin, and pretty much all but one of those, Bitcoin Cash has more than the BTC fork of Bitcoin. The only thing that BTC has that makes it Bitcoin is it has more hash rate and the longest chain with the most proof of work on top of it. But the fact that it's no longer usable as a peer-to-peer digital or electronic cash system, which is the very title of the original Bitcoin white paper, I don't think that BTC's claim to Bitcoin is very strong. But at the end of the day, lots of people and businesses and exchanges are still referring to BTC as Bitcoin. So that's worth something as well. But and so to answer your question directly, I do still hold some BTC as well. But the vast majority I've traded for Bitcoin Cash because it's useful as cash. And I'm much, much more bullish about the future of Bitcoin Cash than I am about the future of BTC. And I remember back in 2011 when I started telling the world, pay attention to Bitcoin, this is gonna change everything and you better go out and buy some Bitcoin right now. People mocked me and laughed at me and said I was stupid and I'm throwing my money away. And many people make those exact same arguments about Bitcoin Cash today. But I wasn't deterred in 2011 when I started promoting Bitcoin to begin with, and I'm still promoting the exact same version of Bitcoin that I started promoting in 2011, but that's Bitcoin Cash. Any investor knows to diversify their portfolio. So you don't put, if you go and invest in the stock market, you don't only buy one stock and no other ones at all. You hold a basket of assets, and the same is smart with cryptocurrencies as well. BTC, BCH, of course, Ethereum, Monero, Dash, Litecoin, no Litecoin, Zcoin, Z.cash, a couple of others. I'd have to look. I have a bunch of tokens on Ethereum. Actually, a lot of people don't realize this. I think you could say I was the second person ever involved in Ripple. So Jed McCaleb decided to start it, and then he reached out to me for some funding. So I put up the seed money to start Ripple, but I don't pay close attention to what's going on in the Ripple ecosystem today, but I wish every cryptocurrency good luck, to be honest. The more useful cryptocurrencies in the world we have, the better. Competition leads to better results at a higher quality product at a lower price. So the same is true of cryptocurrencies. Let 1,000 flowers bloom. There's always talk of infighting about anything that's important. Anything that people care about, they're willing to fight about. If nobody cared about it, nobody would argue about it at all. But I think the community is aligned well enough where there's not likely to be any sort of actual split. I think that that's the least likely outcome. I think likely everybody's aligned well enough that there isn't going to be a split. I don't think that there's likely to be any sort of major split in which the minority split has more than even 5% of the hash rate and market share. So the Bitmain IPO is incredibly bullish for Bitcoin Cash. So Bitmain, publicly on their balance sheet, they're sitting on over 1 million Bitcoin Cash, and they earned over $1 billion in the first quarter of this year. That means they're earning more than $10 million a day in profit. That's a huge amount of money. And this company has a huge, huge, huge economic incentive to make sure that the Bitcoin Cash they're sitting on, 1 million of them, become useful as cash for the world. And so they're really, really busy working at that. And then when Bitmain has their IPO, suddenly all the stockholders of Bitmain become Bitcoin Cash fans as well, because they want to see Bitmain succeed in their mission of promoting Bitcoin Cash as cash for the world. So it's an incredibly bullish sign for Bitcoin Cash. But I remember when I first got involved in Bitcoin in February of 2011, and the price was less than $1, and it seemed like it would change the world overnight. And here we are, almost 8 years later, and it's changed the world to some extent, but not nearly as fast as I had hoped or I would have liked or maybe even expected. And I think the same is probably true of Bitcoin Cash. There's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built. The entire cryptocurrency ecosystem was set back by the censorship imposed amongst the discussion within the community by the BTC camp. And the adoption of cryptocurrencies around the world was delayed by several years by the BTC camp's intentional economic suicide in regards to the economic code that made Bitcoin successful in the first place. Bitcoin became successful in the first place because the transactions were fast, cheap, reliable, and close to anonymous. And the BTC camp intentionally broke those characteristics, and Bitcoin Cash still has those characteristics. So now it'll take time. We don't know exactly how much time, but I think Bitcoin Cash is going to wind up with the lion's share of the cryptocurrency marketplace in the not too distant future. But maybe it's a month, maybe it's a year, maybe it's several years. It's hard to predict exactly how much time it'll take. No one piece is all unto its own. There's a million different moving parts here. So some is government regulation, some is just the media and how they report on it, some is the entrepreneurs building these tools. There's 1,001 different pieces that are all moving together, and there's no one magic piece that you can say this changes everything. You have to have all the pieces together. Just like with a car engine, there's no one single piece that's the engine. It's thousands of different parts all together working together that makes the car go. And you can't say, oh, without this one piece, that's the key piece. It's all the pieces together. It might go a lot higher, it might go a lot lower. It's really hard to know, but the price of BTC at this point is being driven by speculation. The price of Bitcoin Cash at this point is driven by people speculating on its future usefulness in commerce as cash, whereas the BTC supporters at this point are openly hostile to the idea of even using it as cash. So that's a very, very, very different fundamental disagreement as to what the purpose of a cryptocurrency even is. No, I don't think the majority of crypto coin users believe that, but I think the majority of crypto coin users have been brainwashed by the censorship happening within the Bitcoin community. If you go to our Bitcoin on Reddit, which is the #1 discussion platform for the cryptocurrency stuff or Bitcoin stuff in the entire world, and it probably gets more traffic than every single other discussion platform combined. So it's an incredibly important platform. It's been completely censored for about 3 years now. Not only censored, but they literally will manipulate posts to make somebody posting something look like they're agreeing to the exact opposite thing of what they're actually agreeing to. So anybody, I implore them to go and Google Bitcoin censorship, and there's a couple of articles out there written by John Block is the pen name, and it'll just be mind-blowing when you see that. So a lot of people used to think that without the church and the government running everything, the whole world would fall apart, and now people are realizing that that's not true. And I think as time goes on, people will be able to figure out the truth that cryptocurrencies should be usable as a currency, and the BTC community are a bunch of censorship worshipping totalitarians that don't understand the economic code that made Bitcoin successful in the first place. Everybody's heard of Bitcoin, and the people that aren't deep into cryptocurrency, they don't realize that the coin that everybody's calling Bitcoin today isn't the Bitcoin that was invented in 2009. It isn't the Bitcoin that got adoption in 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. It's Bitcoin, but Bitcoin in name only today. The real Bitcoin that actually has the characteristics that made Bitcoin popular to begin with is alive and well in the form of Bitcoin Cash. And for anybody that is unsure of that or the arguments that I'm making, I invite them to go and look for a Bitcoin faucet. And in the early days, and myself and just about everybody else, we received our first Bitcoin, BTC, back in 2010, 11, 12, 13, from a Bitcoin faucet that would just give a few cents of Bitcoin to anybody who wanted some out there on the internet. Bitcoin faucets are now impossible on the BTC chain. Bitcoin faucets are alive and well on the Bitcoin Cash chain. So anybody that wants some free Bitcoin Cash can go to free.bitcoin.com, for example, and you get about a dime's worth of Bitcoin Cash for free. That's impossible to do on BTC today. And so I think that's another example of how Bitcoin Cash has the economic code that initially made Bitcoin a success. And it's a bit of a shame that in the public's mind, they've all heard of Bitcoin, but they don't realize the coin that everybody's calling Bitcoin today isn't Bitcoin. It's something else entirely. I don't think that that's an artificial high. That means somebody's using Bitcoin Cash as a store of value, but the reason you would want to use it as a store of value is because you think you'll be able to spend it later. And that's what I used to use BTC for until these people hijacked the entire Bitcoin BTC community and mocked anybody who actually wanted to use it for commerce. And well, if I'm not going to be able to spend BTC later as cash, why would I use it as a store of value? So I switched most of my BTC into BCH, and we've seen Bitmain do the exact same thing. And a lot of people, if you're new to cryptocurrency, you won't know this. So I was the first person in the entire world to start investing in Bitcoin startups. I translated the Bitcoin white paper into Japanese and the entire Bitcoin.org website into Japanese, and basically brought Bitcoin to Japan. Jihan did the exact same thing to China. Jihan, the CEO of Bitmain, translated the Bitcoin white paper into Chinese and spread Bitcoin into China. So here we have two of the people that are responsible for bringing Bitcoin out of the English-speaking realm and into both Japan and China. And here we are saying that Bitcoin Cash has the characteristics that make it much more likely to be successful as cash for the world. And Jihan is an incredibly successful businessman in his own right as well. So I don't think we should underestimate the power of such a determined individual. Like, he's only in his late 20s and he's built, a multi-billion-dollar company. That's absolutely incredible. For me, if Bitcoin or digital currencies are supposed to be, uncensorable currencies, why is the BTC community going around censoring all sorts of discussion about what's supposed to be an uncensorable currency? If you believe in it as an uncensorable currency, don't censor discussion about it. And that's exactly what's been happening within the BTC community for nearly 3 years now. I think each individual owns themselves and that you have inalienable natural rights that are inherent within your being. And even if a bunch of other people get together and say that we're all going to take a vote to violate your natural rights, that doesn't make it okay. Just like, all the greatest crimes in human history were, pretty much all of them were legal, and they were done with the law, and many of them were done by democratically elected governments as well. I think that decentralization is just a tool to give the system censorship resistance. And by censorship resistance, I mean each individual has 100% complete control over their little tiny corner of the blockchain and the assets that they control on it. And to me, I think that that's much more empowering than the individual, than the right to vote with a million other individuals. And if the rest of the people vote against you, what good did that do you? Whereas with Bitcoin, if the rest of the world votes against what I can do with my Bitcoin, it doesn't matter. 2 + 2 always equals 4, and no amount of voting changes the underlying mathematical characteristics that make Bitcoin Bitcoin. I think most full nodes are running in data centers around the world, and I think that's just fine. There's plenty of Amazon nodes, and at Bitcoin.com we have lots of nodes hosted by Alibaba, we have lots of nodes hosted by Amazon, we have lots of nodes hosted all over the world, and I think that's just fine. And I think a lot of people get hung up on this whole idea that they view decentralization as a goal in and of itself, and decentralization is not the goal. Decentralization is simply the tool that we use to achieve our ends. And our ends, in this case, from my point of view, is censorship resistance, meaning each individual has control of their own digital assets. It doesn't matter if the network is beautifully 100% decentralized. We just need enough decentralization so that each individual has control of their own little piece of their blockchain. Ethereum has a lot of stuff going for it as well. There's a lot of infrastructure, a lot of businesses, a lot of stuff being built on top of it. Bitcoin Cash very well may surpass Ethereum again in the future. I would guess that it's more likely to than not, but you never know, right? Predicting the future is really, really, really hard. But I hold significantly more Bitcoin Cash than Ethereum because I think Bitcoin Cash has a better chance of getting more adoption around the world and bringing more economic freedom to the world. And there's a bunch of competitors to both Bitcoin Cash and Ethereum at this point. There's 1,001 different altcoins out there competing for market share. I think that we're going to see digital currencies get more and more market share. If they'll eventually crowd out fiat currencies altogether, I can hope so, but I don't know for sure. And this is, brand new territory for the whole world. And if I was able to see a little bit farther than others and a little bit earlier than others, it was because I stood on the shoulders of giants previously. And at this point, I don't think anybody knows. All we can do is speculate and hope.